Welcome back. I'm Julie Grant in for Vinnie Politan tonight. On the docket tonight, we have a high-profile case out of Atlanta, Georgia, where Officer Garrett Rolfe is awaiting trial, accused of murdering Rayshard Brooks in a Wendy's parking lot. Court TV anchor Ted Rowlands has the story.
Both of your careers are definitely done because you just shot a man for no reason.
5 days after Rayshard Brooks was shot and killed by Atlanta police officer Garrett Rolfe, Paul Howard, the Fulton County District Attorney, announced an 11-count indictment against Rolfe, which includes felony murder.
The possible sentences for a felony murder conviction would be life without parole, or the death penalty.
According to District Attorney Howard, Rolfe shot Rayshard Brooks twice in the back as he was running away, with one of the bullets piercing his heart. A combination of available video, including police body cameras, shows Officer Brosnan approach Rayshard Brooks, who's asleep in his car, in an Atlanta Wendy's drive-thru line just after 10:40 p.m.
Come on, man. Hey, come in. Hey.
Officer Brosnan wakes Brooks up and asks him to move his car to a parking spot. A few minutes later, Officer Rolfe is on the scene, starting to question Brooks.
Your Honor, hey, I just got something to eat. I went to visit my mother's gravesite. I'm not causing any problems.
Brooks is given a breathalyzer.
Just take a deep breath in, put your mouth over the mouthpiece, go as hard as you can until you stop. Blah, 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 stop.
The officers then give Brooks a number of other field sobriety tests, and at this point, Brooks is doing everything he's told to do.
3, 4, 5.
Asking if he can just walk home.
I can walk home. I don't have to
Why would you walk home?
I just don't want to be in violation of anybody. I can walk. My sister's house is right here.
Then everything changes when the officers decide to take Brooks into custody.
I think you've had too much to drink to be driving. Put your hands on your back, Willie. Here, put your hands on your butt. Hey, stop fighting.
As Brooks begins to fight, there's a struggle over Officer Brosnan's taser.
You're gonna get tased.
Brooks wrestles the taser away and breaks free. Officer Rolfe gives chase with his taser in his right hand, but then, watch, he switches the taser to his left and draws his gun. Meanwhile, Brooks, while running, turns back and fires the taser he took from Brosnan at Officer Rolfe. Seconds later, Rolfe fires his handgun and Brooks falls to the ground. Brooks was taken to the hospital but died during surgery.
I have my think tank still with me tonight. Criminal defense attorneys Michael Bixson, Eklund Mercy, and Renee Hill. Eklund, I want to begin with you on this one, please. Tell me, and I want you to look at both sides of the case. What do you see as the biggest difficulties that each side is facing in this case? And also, I want to acknowledge there is no burden on the defense, as we know, but we also know that sometimes it can be very helpful to present a case. So tell me how you assess this case, please.
Well, for the defense, the difficulty is the negligence. There's negligence all over this place. It was it was heavily trafficked Wendy's parking lot. So when the officer shot in a Wendy's parking lot where people were actually there, that was negligent. He had no regard for human life at that point. And then the reason for the stop was for a drunk driving where the car is actually parked. There's no reason to chase him. There's no reason. The crime did not fit the punishment. He wasn't going to do anything. There was no fact that indicated that Rayshard Brooks was going to commit any other felonies besides go home, which you have that information. So that's going to be an issue. With regards to the prosecution's going to have a little hard time with the resisting arrest. So I'm curious to see what type of argument they're going to crop for the resisting arrest. I think that they'll be able to say that just based on the times, this was immediately after George Floyd, that, tensions are high. Black men weren't feeling safe to go, weren't feeling safe to be arrested. Freddie Gray once he was arrested, he died. Sandra Bland, she got arrested and she died. So there was a different You have to take it from Rayshard Brooks' perspective, and I think that it's going to be a little bit hard for the prosecution to do that, but I'm really curious to see how they do that. But both sides, it's not an open and closed case. It's not. It's not.
Right. No, certainly not. And we're going to keep watching this one. Michael, I want to pick your brain, please. We know that use of force is going to be a major issue, if not the biggest issue in this case. And I'm wondering, let's just say you were tasked with defending Officer Rolfe. Talk to me about what kind of an expert you might bring in to educate a jury on a taser, because we know that a taser, it is a lethal weapon. It's a less lethal weapon than a firearm, but it's still a lethal one. So tell me what you may do if you were on the defense side to establish that the officer acted appropriately.
Well, just that. One, I'd want to bring in somebody to talk about the use of force doctrine, when they're supposed to use it, how much force. I'd also want to bring in someone who could really talk about tasers and break them down, explain to a jury what they could and what they could not do. Lastly, I'd also really be focusing on the self-defense aspect of this case. And I think that's really the most crucial part of it for the defense team. If they're able to demonstrate that he used a proportionate amount of defense to what he perceived, then I think he has a good shot.
That's interesting you say that. Follow-up for you. Do you think we might see that presented in affirmative defense here, a self-defense case here?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Tell us why,
Absolutely.
please, Michael.
So whenever you have any case involving where both sides were alleged to have used force, you're going to want to present some type of self-defense argument. And here in Georgia, you can present a motion prior to a trial, motion for immunity, because in Georgia, if you're able to show that you acted in self-defense, it's an affirmative defense, and the case can then, well, you basically win it if you're able to show that you acted in self-defense. The question was it actually self-defense? And that's where sort of the use of force comes into play, the use of the firearm versus the use of the taser. And then obviously the fact that he's a police officer plays an additional role into it. So it is a very complicated issue. But again, like I said before, I do think that he has a decent shot at it.
Michael, appreciate that. Renee, I'd like to pick your brain, if I may, please, about the high-profile nature of this case. And when you're a trial attorney thinking about everything you're up against with the jury selection and whatnot, do you think this is a case where we need a change of venue? Tell me why or why not. What would be your thoughts assessing it from that perspective, please?
Well, I don't think that you need a change of venue because it is a high-profile case and everyone knows about it. So no matter where you go, you're going to have someone on the jury who has heard something about the case or viewed something about the case. So you don't need to change venue, and I don't think that a judge would actually grant that request in this case. And because it is a high-profile case, you're also, you don't want to try your case in the media. So you want to try to keep things in the courtroom, maybe have a gag order if possible, so that people are not talking about what their evidence is going to be in the case. There are things that you try to do, especially as defense counsel, when the media is involved to protect your client. And if it's a high-profile client, it gets even harder to do that.
Great points from you all. Thank you so much for all of that insight on this one. We're going to continue tracking it for you, of course, here at Court TV. And just to let you know, we looked at the docket, and currently there are no upcoming dates set for any motions hearings. There isn't even a trial date scheduled yet, and that is largely because we know there's been a changeover with the prosecutors. Georgia's Attorney General just announcing yesterday that he's appointed a head of a prosecutors group to oversee this case. So we can imagine that with that changeover, there would be a little bit of a delay, but we're keeping our eyes on the docket for you always.